Buggy the Clown might be one of One Piece's biggest walking jokes, but its devil fruit? That thing is secretly terrifying. The Bara Bara No Mi sounds ridiculously simple. The power to literally fall apart like a cheap party trick. Something you expect from a clown. And yet somehow Oda turned that simplicity into one of the most creatively dangerous abilities in the entire series. Immunity to swords, flying limbs, unpredictable angle attacks, and the ability to survive being chopped into confetti. That's not just funny, that's borderline broken. Under the right circumstances, obviously. But what makes this fruit even more brilliant is how it perfectly matches Buggy himself. Chaotic, theatrical, absurd, and somehow always falling upward into power. So in today's newest edition of the Devil Fruit Handbook, we're gonna break down why the Bara Bara No Mi is not just a gag ability, it's one of the most cleverly designed devil fruits in One Piece. So the Bara Bara No Mi is a paramecia type devil fruit that grants the user the ability to split their body into multiple pieces and levitate those pieces freely. At its most basic level, the fruit allows the user, Buggy, to separate his limbs, his torso, and even smaller fragments of his body while maintaining full control over each section. More importantly, the fruit grants passive immunity to slashing and piercing damage. Any cut simply results in Buggy's body separating rather than being injured. What makes this fruit deceptively brilliant is its mechanical simplicity. Unlike many devil fruits that rely on elemental manipulation or large-scale environmental destruction, the Bara Bara No Mi operates through a single core concept: separation and control. Yet, from this singular idea stems insanely, extremely versatile skill set. Buggy can create attacks from unpredictable angles, evade otherwise lethal attacks, and he can also manipulate detached body parts as autonomous, independent weapons. The fruit also introduces levitation mechanics, allowing separated pieces to float within a certain range. This expands the ability beyond simple self-separation into battlefield control. The user can grab opponents, lift heavy objects, reposition their body for strategic advantages. Even Buggy's survival capacity, it is enhanced because of this, as he can remain alive and functional while separated from vital limbs and organs for extended periods of time. In essence, the Bara Bara No Mi showcases how a power that initially appears gimmicky, campy, a bit quirky and absurd, a bit comical, it can evolve into a highly flexible combat toolkit when used in the ways that you expect someone as comically insane as Buggy, which also brings me to a further breakdown of the strengths and the combat potential. The Bara Bara No Mi's greatest strength is its complete immunity to cutting and piercing attacks. In a world where swordsmen are among some of the most dominant fighters, looking at Mihawk, looking at Zoro, this ability instantly gives Buggy a natural advantage against major combat archetypes. Attacks that would instantly defeat most opponents, they become arguably meaningless against him. Even high-level sword strikes, they simply divide his body without causing too much harm. Offensively, Buggy can weaponize his unpredictability. Detached limbs allow him to bypass traditional defensive blocks. For example, if an opponent grabs his forearm, Buggy can simply detach his fists and continue with this attack. His Chop cannon demonstrates how he can launch limbs as projectiles, turning his body into a multi-directional attack system. The levitation ability further enhances combat versatility. Buggy can grab enemies from unexpected angles, suspend larger opponents in the air, or manipulate external objects while also fighting. This allows him to control spacing in combat, which is often a decisive factor in battles. Defensively, Buggy can split apart preemptively to avoid damage entirely. By ejecting body parts before impact, he reduces incoming attacks to harmless separations. Additionally, his ability to reform himself, even after being reduced to thin strips, it demonstrates pseudo-regenerative abilities, not on the scale of what you would expect from a Logia user, but it does kind of beg the question, was Buggy's devil fruit potentially misclassified? Now, psychologically, this devil fruit also creates confusion. Opponents often believe they've landed a killing blow, only to realize Buggy has basically remained completely unharmed. That's why I'm calling it a pseudo-regenerative ability, because just like when you hit, say, a Logia type and you think that you've done them in and then suddenly they reform because they were going intangible right there on the spot, Buggy basically pulls his body back together. A shock factor like this, it allows Buggy to regain momentum and launch counterattacks because whoever's fighting him is thinking they're not fighting a Logia type, they're fighting a simple Paramecia type Devil Fruit user, when in reality, Buggy isn't going down as easily as you might have thought, which that also brings me to the weaknesses of the Devil Fruit because he does have them. Despite its versatility, the Bara Bara No Mi possesses several critical weaknesses that maintain its balance. First, Buggy does remain vulnerable to blunt force attacks. Punches, kicks, and consecutive damage, they can still harm him, especially if it's concussive. While he can partially mitigate this by detaching his impacted body parts, the fruit does not provide total immunity to physical trauma. Second, separated body parts, they retain sensory feedback. This creates a exploitable vulnerability. Enemies can restrain or attack detached limbs to incapacitate Buggy directly. Even comedic weaknesses like tickling or immobilizing parts, say, have a proven effect. That is how someone like, say, early East Blue Nami, if she could outsmart someone like Buggy, Nami could defeat him. This highlights how the fruit's absurdity also serves as a tactical limitation. Third, the Devil Fruit's operational range, it's restricted. If the body parts move beyond a certain radius, Buggy loses control over them. This limitation forces Buggy to remain spatially aware during combat itself. Another key restriction is that Buggy's feet must remain grounded for levitation to function. If his feet lose contact with a stable foothold, his body, it risks losing cohesion or being drawn back together itself. This grounding requirement introduces a positional vulnerability that skilled opponents can exploit. Finally, the Devil Fruit retains the universal weakness that is shared by all Devil Fruit users, which is basically a vulnerability to seawater and sea stone. And that brings me to why the Bara Bara No Mi reflects Buggy's character. So the Bara Bara No Mi perfectly mirrors Buggy's over-the-top theatrical and scheming personality. At first glance, both Buggy and his Devil Fruit appear comedic and absurd. However, beneath the surface lies a surprisingly functionality and danger. Buggy thrives on deception, misdirection, and exaggerated swordsmanship. The Fruit reinforces this by allowing him to stage elaborate visual illusions during battle. His ability to appear dismembered and multiply attacks from different directions or manipulate his body into bizarre forms, it aligns perfectly with his role as a performer or as a opportunistic pirate. The Fruit also symbolizes Buggy's fragmented identity. Unlike pirates that are driven by overwhelming strength or grand ideological ambition, Buggy survives through adaptability, luck, manipulation of circumstances, and just being a comedic character. His ability to literally break himself apart reflects how he navigates chaos by dividing problems into manageable pieces while avoiding direct confrontation against stronger enemies in some instances. Additionally, the Devil Fruit complements Buggy's scheming nature. Many of his attacks, they rely on tricking opponents into believing they have gained the upper hand. His automatic immunity to sword-based attacks, it feeds into his rare moments of confidence, particularly against a swordsman, reinforcing that comedic irony that Buggy is simultaneously cowardly as well as uniquely fearless under certain circumstances. Ultimately, the Bara Bara No Mi embodies the exaggerated absurdity that defines Buggy as a lovable character. It transforms him into a walking visual spectacle while secretly providing a power set that, in the hands of a more disciplined fighter, could rival some of the more traditionally respected Devil Fruits. While it's convenient for this edition of the Devil Fruit Handbook, you can click here on the left to check out other installments of the Devil Fruit Handbook.